the mystery is something that does not have any set thing that you're meant to do. When somebody's dying, it's a mysterious process, and
Hmm.
therefore there are no rules. So here we are again, the wild psychotherapists, John and Roland. And today, kind of as an add-on to what we've been talking about by aging, we will have some sort of conversation around death, dying, and all of those fascinating subjects. I find this most interesting. John is a little bit more hesitant about these things. So I think you should go first, John.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, I'm happy to go first. Thank you, Roland. That's kind of wild of you to do that to me.
Thank you.
Okay, well, death and dying. I think from my earliest years in seeing dead bodies and dead animals too, I, I think I've always kind of not felt almost anything, except that this is different. This is like it's not and like anything that's alive, and but there's a body there. And when I've been at funerals and people have been crying, even when I was a child, seeing my big brother crying or other people standing around crying, I've just felt puzzled. Why are they crying? And it may be, because I'm somewhere on the autistic spectrum, maybe something about that. But, it hasn't disturbed me. It's been more like curiosity. And as I've grown up and lived through different sort of deaths, and in Canada, every day when I was growing up, every day at 1 o'clock, there would be a death notice on the radio, the local radio.
Mm.
There'd be music, and then there'd be an announcement about who had died in the community that day or the day before, and where they were lying in state, and which
Ah.
funeral home they were at. My dad and mom sort of religiously had us listen to this every day. It was kind of interesting, more watching them, the way they would talk about, oh, Gordon Phillips has died. Isn't that a pity, Helen? That there'd be a kind of dialogue between them. That, oh, I think I saw him just last week. So there'd be a kind of process around it. That would be interesting to watch, like a kind of remembrance, but also a question. Do you know him, Helen? No, Archie, I don't know that person. Have you not come across them through your work? No, no, I don't, but maybe their cousin I have. So there'd be a big dialogue. And my dad, because of his job, went to funeral homes on a regular basis because he sold insurance policies to people that were just kind of big enough policies to bury them. So he had these relationships with all these people in the community. And he also felt obliged to attend all these funerals. And then he would follow up the funerals with the paperwork, that would need to be done around the dead person.
But this was a small community. Did they make a big deal of funerals?
Yeah, they did. Like when somebody died, then there were rooms in the funeral home that had the different caskets, and a name outside always smelled like flowers when you walked in there. And then the family would stand at a certain period of time over 2 days. Everybody would go in and shake their hand and have a little chit chat and go up and look at the coffin.
Was there
And
something that you were meant to say to the, because in Ireland there's something you have to say to the relatives of the dead person.
no, not really. Not that I know of anyway. There might have been some secret handshakes.
No, in Ireland, everybody comes up to you and they shake your hand and they say, "I'm sorry for your loss." They go to the next one, "I'm sorry for your loss." I'm
Yeah.
sorry for your loss.
Well, yeah, no, that's familiar. That's
Yeah,
familiar.
it's a very Irish thing. And I
Us.
remember with my mother, these little kids, they would be like 6 years old. They'd come up and they'd shake your hands. "I'm sorry for your loss." And then they'd go and look in the coffin because they found that fascinating.
It was quite a thing growing up with connection with death, every day almost through the
Mm,
announcements and
mhm.
the funerals. Yeah, I think I've got some role models that were kind of interesting. There was a boy in our school who had cancer, and he was dying of cancer, and he was such a jolly guy, and he was very upfront about the fact that he was dying. He was losing his hair because of the chemotherapy, but he was dying. He was quite philosophical and very outspoken, about
Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
and he was quite an extrovert. And so that was fascinating to kind of just appreciate his take on death, how he was sort of going out to meet it really and not afraid of it.
How many of your clients have died? And how many of them have you seen through that process?
My clients who've died it's been more sudden. It's not been us seeing them through a process at all. I haven't had any clients that have been in the process of living with illness and then dying. I mean, that's curious because I haven't. I've had more kind of sudden deaths. And I've tended not to go to funerals of clients. It felt like kind of private, their space with me, unless I've become involved through family therapy or family work. And then if it's become family, then I have gone
Hmm.
to the funeral or even gone and sat with people. I don't know. I think it matters how we view death ourselves as therapists, and then our ability to kind of tune into the uniqueness of how everyone, is in a process of making sense of death over time. And it's a process. It's not sometimes people have very fixed views, but I think most of the time a lot goes on internally that people don't share. I sometimes will say to people, it might be interesting for us just to think as part of therapy, what's it all about? What's this life all about? How do we understand this life and why we're here or what's going on or death and dying and birth and that going on all around us? What do we think it's all about? We have to kind of try to make sense, and quite often people don't talk about it. And so I offer to go first. So I say, because I always feel like in bringing it up and then saying, would you like to tell me? Then it's kind of putting people on the spot. And so I feel like that's not fair, really, if I'm bringing it up. So I say, would you like me to go first? And they say, yeah. They always say, yeah, you do that. And I said, well, you can have a think about how it resonates with, how you see things and how you would talk about making sense of death and dying and life and the purpose of what we're here for. And then I give a little spiel. Uh,
Hmm. Do you
uh,
give the same spiel or do you give a different spiel for every person?
it's mostly the similar spiel. I say there's this mystery. This is my spiel. I say there's this mystery that we can never know really what the mystery is all about because it's we are a mystery as an entity as lives. Earth is a mystery. Why is life going on here? And out there is just such a mystery because it seems to be a bit endless space and the millions and millions of miles and how everything whole hangs together. The planets, the way they hang together, and the forces that are beyond our understanding, but are remarkable. I can really understand how the ancients almost like worshipped the heavens, worshipped the sun, the moon, the stars. So I say there's this mystery, and it's like a universal energy, creative energy. We're part of that universal energy. All life on Earth, you could say, is ignited by something coming into the world of form, whether it's grass or little tiny creatures or humans or other animals and trees. That there's this universal force, this energy that manifesting itself in a magical way. And it's also kind of experimenting. It's not like a will. It's more like it's a something that has happened and it's a mystery to itself even. We are its manifestations but we are all of the time, you could say we're giving algorithms back to it in the way that we live, the way we think, the way we talk, how we develop ourselves. And in some ways, we're its agents to try to live as fully and freely as possible and learn in our lives how to awaken to that fullness and that freedom. And freedom meaning to be able to see things in a way that's beyond just human centric or John centric, but to kind of almost like respect the mystery that everything that lives has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it is a manifestation of that remarkable force.
Right.
But very few people really talk about it in terms of us being agents of that divine force, that magical force. But that something came into a conception, that energy was locked in to the conditionality of a human, and then there's a journey that that little guy is locked into. And if the conditions are right, and there's enough love, and especially if he can participate through protesting or, you know, taking part in the kind of relational field instead of just being in a conformist kind of world where he's just got to copy and fit into a world that's already pretty strongly defined. If it's like that, then it's a bit of a flatland. But if it's really abundant love and care and participation and, great parenting and stimulation and interest, and there's this kind of emergence towards fullness and freedom. And it gives you the kind of basic ground for, in ways that you don't even realize, connect with your universal self, because you can get wider perspectives on things, or you can think about things differently, or you can aspire to learn, but that you're
Hmm.
all of the time moving towards, either accidentally or at the end of your life, returning to that source again.
Then there's always that question, then what? And
Mm,
that's a difficult question for the ego, isn't it? Then what? What happens after death? Is it just the end? Or is there some sort of transformation? Is there some sort of continuation? So that's a question that I actually like to ask sometimes my clients. It's not appropriate for every client, but it's
mm,
definitely appropriate for older clients as they get older to say, so what was this all about? What is it all about? How do you understand it? And what's going to happen?
mhm,
Yeah. I mean, I like your the mystery. That's what I resonate to because that's one of the things when I talk about death is the mystery. We have no idea and we're not meant to know somehow.
mm, mm,
And that we can bang against that mystery with our mind and we can make
mm,
up stories, we can have rebirth or we can have heaven and hell and we can have all sorts of interesting stories. We still don't know. Personally, I think all sorts of things could happen, but I'm not sure what. And I wouldn't like to limit it to like, well, it has to be this or this or this. I think it's much more interesting. So the mystery piece, and the other, when I'm talking to people about death, I often talk about that. The mystery is something that does not have any set thing that you're meant to do. When somebody's dying, it's a mysterious process, and
mm,
therefore there are no rules. There's no right ways of doing it. There's no wrong ways of doing it. There's only the way that you can manage to do it. Like if you've got somebody in your family dying and you don't know when they're going to die, and should you be there at their death? Should you not be there at their death? Should you be making this effort to somehow stay in the hospital so that you can be there right at the moment they die? Which,
mm,
as we know, doesn't always work. My father being an example, which is I wasn't there, but my family was there, my brothers and sisters. They went out for a cup of tea and he managed to die just when they went out. Some people,
mm,
it's a very private experience and they seem to want to not have people around when they're dying. Sometimes I wonder if it's the quality of relationship that they feel which holds them in the world. And
mm,
when that's attenuated, then they can leave. I certainly, my father at 99 was like, I really want to get out of here. This is not a great experience anymore. I think the last 3 years of his life, he did not particularly enjoy them. My experience of death has been always a little out of sync with everybody else's. As you say, yours has been naturalized. It was a natural part of your experience. Because I had a near-death experience when I was 14, that set the tone, which was that I'm not sure that it's better to be alive than to be dead. In fact, I'm pretty much certain that it's better to be dead. And that is that it's much, much more enjoyable to be dead and in whatever happens afterwards than it is to be in this life. And I can never shake that feeling. It's
Mm,
not rational. It doesn't actually make much sense to me in a
mm,
logical sense. It's just a sense that this is a kind of a way station. And I really enjoy it and I love being alive. You know, I'm really happy to be alive, but there's better things to come. Now, I don't like the idea of dying because that can be very uncomfortable and kind of humiliating in some ways. You know, you see people having to be dependent. I'm not good at being dependent. They're
mm,
losing some of their functions. I'm not going to be very good at that. The
mm,
dying, being dead, I'm pretty happy with. The dying bit, not so
mm,
happy with.
mm,
It seems to be worse than being born. Uh,
mm,
it's a tricky business, except for some people. They seem to be lucky.
mm,
So I
mm,
had that. I also had an experience not very long ago, a few years ago, where I went and had an operation and I was under anesthetic. And I had the same feeling as when I had the near-death experience. I woke up thinking, I'm back. This isn't a good idea. It was so much better. Now, I don't know if that was the drugs. Could have been the drugs, but it lasted for a whole 24 hours afterwards. I just felt I feel so nice. I feel so good. And I don't know why I'm here. Wouldn't it have been better to stay wherever that was? I have a sense that was really good. And this
mm,
is a poor second best, really. So you see that makes it very hard for me to be frightened of death. And but it also makes it possible for me. I've worked with hospice quite a lot. I work with death and dying. I work with an old client of mine who got in touch with me. I'd worked with some anxieties he had about health issues, actually. And then a few years later, his wife contacted me. Actually, he asked her to because he was dying. And so every week I would go to his house and I would sit with him. Sometimes we'd talk, sometimes we wouldn't talk. Sometimes he'd tell me that he was frightened, and sometimes I would just help him relax a little bit. He wouldn't talk to his family.
mm,
And that they were very grateful that he was talking to somebody because he was one of those very, very restrained kind of people who didn't share his feelings at all. He could
mm,
share them with me a little bit. And as he got close to the end, I actually loved being with him. And that's my experience of death, which is I like being with people who are dying, who go through
mm,
a normal dying process, which is you basically gradually, your time where you wake gets less, your time where you sleep gets more, you get more comatose, and you start to energetically kind of drift away.
mm,
And the last time I saw him, I said to his wife, I probably won't be coming next week because I knew that he was going to die.
mm,
That was a lovely experience because then his wife asked me to give a eulogy
mm.
at the funeral, which I thought was a great honor, but very unusual.
If we embrace the notion that we are essentially a mystery ourselves, can we relax into the mystery instead of, and in some ways learn in life to do that more often, into the not knowing, the place where we don't have to know. We just abide in that sort of stillness of appreciating, maybe having even a kind of reverence for the mystery of nothing is ever simple. Yeah, that's what I'm left with.
I'm left with actually the experience I had with this person who I was sitting by their bed while they were dying and visiting every week. And how in the beginning, his fear, his tension of not knowing gradually kind of dissipated
Mm,
until it wasn't at all important. once you get past the fear piece, which probably is instinctual, but also is definitely cultural, there's a kind of profound, mysterious process happens.
Mm,
Rather wonderful.
mm,
And it's sad that the culture doesn't prepare people well for death, that it doesn't actually value it as an experience. It doesn't look at it as mystery and looks at it as this bad extinguishing somehow. You've been extinguished and gone. It's both unimportant and really kind of terrifying. It can't be like that. Certainly, I don't expect my own dying to be like that. We have to kind of get to the part where, as you say, we embrace that experience. But this culture is not helping. And I think as therapists, particularly those who like to work with death and dying, it's a very profound experience. And it needs really to be given much more space and attention.
mm. Thank you.